Hi guys, and welcome back to the second episode in our little mini masterclass, Selling Magically Express.
Indeed. And, last week we talked about the importance of emotional engagement.
Yes.
We were talking about emotions of trust, liking, etc. being more important than your USP.
Yes, all things being equal, then the people with emotional engagement are going to be the ones who get it. And even if someone else's offer is slightly better than yours, if you're trusted and liked more, you'll get it.
Yep. And, some interesting research that's written up in Martin Lindstrom's book called Biology. That's Byology.
Very clever. Can see what he did there?
Yep. See what he did there. Was using what's called functional MRI. I think most people are aware of MRI scanners.
Yes.
Regular MRI scanners. A regular MRI scanner takes a still photograph of basically what's happening structurally inside your body.
Yeah, like an X-ray.
Yeah. Whereas fMRI is real time. It's a movie. And what it shows is, for instance, if you're doing an fMRI of somebody's brain, shows you where the oxygenated blood goes to in real time.
So it's basically telling you what the brain is doing because it's saying that's where it's sending the energy.
Yeah.
That's very clever.
So they did some interesting research. I don't know how long ago it was that the government passed that law that said that all cigarette packets had to have a health warning.
Yeah.
They'll put smoking causes cancer, whatever it is. It was almost like that the cigarette manufacturers just rolled over and played ball. They didn't, put any resistance up to it or any of those kind of things. But, wealthy organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So they put somebody, a smoker, I said, does the health warnings change your thinking about your health and you smoking? And they all said yes. Then they put somebody in an fMRI scanner, showed them a packet with a health warning on, and found the part of the brain that lit up was the part of the brain that runs addictions. So in actual fact, pun intended, those health warnings were killer advertising for the cigarette companies.
I see what you did there.
Because they wanted to basically make people want to smoke more, even though consciously they thought differently about smoking and their health. In actual fact, emotionally, they wanted to smoke even more.
Well, they probably thought was subconsciously, it's like, oh, I'm going to die. God, I need a cigarette.
Now, then, the other research, because we were talking about Formula One.
Yes.
Cigarette advertising had been banned in Formula One for a long time.
Yes. I don't know if you guys, the older guys out there remember things like the JPS.
Yes, black and gold cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember having one of those as a kid with, obviously, cigarette advertising all over it.
But Marlboro paid Ferrari, I think, 150 million in sponsorship. It doesn't make any sense since they can't advertise.
Yeah.
But there's a Marlboro red and a Ferrari red.
Right.
The cars in Formula One are painted Marlboro red, not Ferrari red.
You can see why companies, it's like Orange. Do you remember, are they still around? I think they've been Orange, the telephone brand.
Oh, no, they're three now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Group.
That's it. Yeah, they moved, but they had so much protection around the RGB value for that orange.
Yeah, and originally what Ferrari did, what Marlboro did with Ferrari, was they put the barcode that was on a cigarette packet on the rear wing and on the sleeves of the pit crew and all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
because they'd gone show people that. And boom, what lights up? Part of the brain that doesn't want to smoke. If they're a Marlboro smoker.
Yes.
Then, advertising standards when we know what you're doing. You can't do that anymore.
We see what you did there.
And what they did was Marlboro checked it out and found that if it was just a white rectangle rather than a barcode, it had the same effect in the fMRI scanner. So they extended the sponsorship for another year. Yeah. So the other thing that this brought up was, this research brought up, was that when people were put into a moment of decision,
Yes.
doesn't matter how big a decision, any decision, the part of the brain that lights up is the part of the brain that runs emotion. So the decision is made based on emotion. The person might not even be aware that they've made the decision. Then in the fMRI scanner, then the activity goes to the cortex, which is the emotions made on decision. Then the person does conscious post-rationalization.
Yes.
To make sense out of their emotional decision.
I remember, and this was years ago, you and I were having a conversation about, the mammalian brain, the reptilian brain, and how it just out-processes. The reptilian brain is literally like that.
Yeah.
It just out-processes the conscious brain. And again, a lot of those sort of emotional responses, that kind of hormones and other the juicy bits of decision making, for the want of a better phrase, happen in there.
And when I've got a group of people in the room, I say, okay, so how many people here needed or wanted to buy something? You had an idea as to how much you were willing to spend consciously. You went out to get this thing that you need or want, and you saw something that was even better than you were expecting.
Even better than that.
It was more expensive, but you bought it anyway. And by the time you got home, you got a logical, rational, sensible reason why you'd spent more than you had previously said that you would.
Yes.
And, show of hands. Now, what I've done, I've been testing this out for a good few years, and a lot of people think there's a gender bias around that, and there isn't. Both men and women put their hands up to say, "Yeah, I've confessed. Yes, I bought something where I've spent more than I said I was going to."
Is there a gender bias in terms of who thinks there's a gender bias out of interest?
Well, interestingly, yes. Until I actually do that, it's men that think that all women do that.
Yes.
Yeah, but men don't.
No.
But all the men put their hand up and I actually ask them directly the question. Yeah, so there's no gender bias to the actual decision-making process or the behaviour.
Yeah.
There is a gender bias around certain stereotypes.
Talking about racing, because again, I'm fascinated with micro decisions, because you think about all the decisions, and again, we're obviously looking at this from the point of view of hopefully getting your customers to decide to go with you. But decisions throughout our entire lives, and this is one of the going back to the main aim of the results show, which is basically to help us use NLP to get the results we want in our life professionally and personally. But where you've got all of these kind of tiny micro decisions, when you add them all together, they have a far more cumulative effect than a lot of the big decisions that you make. But in terms of those sorts of decisions, there's a fascinating book. If you haven't read it, get a copy of it. It's by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Blink.
Yeah.
And what it does is it basically looks at how the brain processes and makes decisions far faster than the conscious mind can ever do it.
Yeah.
And the one that I always remember is it's about a racing driver. So he's in Formula One, and he's basically coming into the home straight, he's hammering down it, and his foot just comes straight off the gas. And he doesn't know why. And literally just around the corner, there's been a multiple pileup. Now, this has happened very, very shortly beforehand, so there was no official warning, there was no visible sign that there was anything happening around the corner, but without knowing why he did it, he slowed down. As a result, he was able to not plough into it and add to the problem. When they then looked at it, I can't remember if it was hypnosis or something, but they had to really, understand, so what was it in that environment? Then they clocked it. he said, normally when I come into a home straight, everybody's looking at me. Right. In this instance, every single face in that grandstand was looking around the corner. So what has happened is, without him being aware of it, his brain has gone, there's a problem over there, I'm taking my foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And so this is why we need to be aware of kind of the emotional factors about decision making, because because if we get this wrong, it might be that your customer can't tell you why they didn't buy from you, because they don't know. They just had a bad feeling or something wasn't quite right.
So, both last week's episode and this week's episode is really about this thing called emotional engagement.
Yes.
How do we emotionally engage our prospects? Well, and also, how do we emotionally engage with our prospects' unconscious mind rather than conscious mind?
Yes.
So, that study actually proved that nobody makes any decision based on logic, rationality, and sense.
I know I don't.
It's all done with emotion. Hence the fact that we've got loads of cameras lying around the place.
Again, I'm justifying it, but I turn around to my other half and say, well, at least I don't beat up old ladies in the streets. No, it's not too bad. Because I use them for work, blah, 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 blah.
And, when I was 60, what was that, two years ago, my nephew and niece bought me a T-shirt which said, yes, I really do need another guitar.
For those of you guys who've seen other bits and pieces around, there are a load of very, very nice guitars. And the thing is that guitars are like cameras, you can't use more than one at once.
That's exactly, you've only got one pair of hands, why do you need all these guitars?
Yes.
But there's some logical, rational, sensible reasons.
Yes, if you happen to go to, kind of like a certain bar on a certain night, or they ask you to get up and play because the lead guitarist has gone ill, and you hadn't had a chance to practice with that sort of guitar, you'd look like a fool.
Yeah, that's it. So you need cameras. And cars. So here's a strategy. This is an important thing, because we talked about USPs last week, unique selling points. Well, I want to flip that on its head this week and look at UBPs.
What the hell is a UBP?
Unique buying points.
Oh!
So all people have unique buying points.
Okay.
Now, if you've decided this is my USPs, you present your USPs to your prospects, and their unique buying points just happen to be the same as your unique selling points, and they trust you and they like you, etc., 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 deal done.
If all the planets just happen to align.
Yep.
Yeah.
What if you were able to find out your prospects' unique buying points?
That would be really handy,
before you pitched, and you made your USPs the same as your client's UBPs.
What, you kind of synced up with them, established some sort of rapport and connection.
So we've got that piece, then we've got emotion and unconscious. So how do we do that? Well, within the person's unconscious mind is our values. Those are our emotional hot buttons.
Yes, because we actually touched on this quite a while back in the one about families, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of, values alignment and stuff like that.
Yeah. So how do we find out very quickly what our prospects' unconscious hot buttons are? UBPs. What we do is we do what I would call a quick and dirty values elicitation. Yeah.
What make it sound so naughty? Street NLP.
Street NLP, yeah. So let's say we're going to sell a mobile phone. Then what you do is you say to your prospect, what's important to you about a mobile phone? And they tell you. And you get 3 or 4 of these values come out. Then for each of the 3 or 4 values that come out, you then go, And why is that important to you? And then, why is that important to you? These are the three questions.
It's like, I think that Toshiba or something like that, or it might be in Toyota, they have a thing called the 7 whys.
Right.
Where you basically keep on asking it. It's almost like a child. Okay, so this, why? Because this, why? Because this, why? And it's like eventually you get down to the root cause, the bottommost belief. And again, that's the foundation on which decisions are made.
And so the answers to those questions will give you a number of things. The things that somebody really wants to avoid by the particular mobile phone they decide upon, and the things the person really wants to get
away from and
towards and away from again. So then you demonstrate how your mobile phone will enable them to avoid all the things they want to avoid and get all the things that they want to have. So I did this with one of my mentoring clients. And he got basically a big project that he was being asked to pitch for. And he phoned me up and says, I've never pitched anything. I've never sold anything. Can you show me what to do? So I said, yeah, go into the prospect and ask these questions. What's important to you about project? Why is that important to you? Why is that important to you? Find out what he's wanting to avoid, what he's wanting to get. And then, so he did that. Then I had another meeting with him. I said, so are you going to do a pitch on your, PowerPoint? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, so we've got 3 values. We've got certain things that the person wants to avoid by having that value, certain things that the person wants to gain by having that value satisfied. So we added 3 extra slides with each of the values as being the heading.
Yeah.
Then we put the things he wanted to avoid in red bullet points and the things he wanted to get in green bullet points. Added that to the presentation. And so he went in to do this presentation. By the time he got to that, like the first or the second slide that we'd added, which wasn't actually anything to do with the project from a technical point of view, the guy goes, I can't believe this. You are the only people that we're speaking to that seems to understand us.
Yes.
Let me bring the rest of my team in because I want them to see the rest of this presentation. I phoned up my client and said, how did it go? There's a very serious guy, scientifically minded guy. I said, how did it go? He goes like, that was fucking magic. He said, this other very scientific guy like slammed his hand that, yes, this is exactly what we want.
Yes.
Which is the other thing that comes up in this. He'd only told him those things a couple of days before. This was the other thing that came out from Lindstrom's research, is that people have short memories.
Yes.
So how do we stay top of mind? Emotional engagement.
The thing that kind of triggers in me is Stephen Covey's thing, which is the greatest need is the need to be understood.
Right.
So, and again, it comes back to, kind of like, who are the people that you like? It's the people that get you. Do you know what I mean? It's like your friends and all the rest of it. If you have a friend of yours who, you've either got in-jokes or stuff, but you just know that they kind of understand you and all the rest of it, then there is an instant attraction to that.
Yeah.
And there's also another one of his, which is seek first to understand,
Yeah.
and then to be understood.
Right.
And again, it's if you look at all of the best, kind of like people who, and not necessarily just sales. If you're trying to persuade a kid to do something, ask them questions first.
Yeah.
Because your close or your encouragement to make a decision should always be based on, kind of like their viewpoint. Because everyone's got their different camera views on the world. This goes back to the cone and the triangle, and you see a cone, you see a triangle, I see a circle. It's actually a cone that we're looking at. So everybody's got a different way of looking at it. So by working out what's important to them, then we basically attach it, and that's where the trust comes in.
Yeah. And also where the rapport comes in.
Yes.
Because rapport is that I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, this is what's important to me about the product. What's important to me about the product or service. It just happens that they're the same as the prospects.
Yes. If you're like me, and I know I am, yeah.
And that's when you close.
So, we are going to wrap this episode up there. We've got another exciting one coming up for you very, very shortly. And we will continue our masterclass in the art of selling magically, express version. And so, in the meantime, if you've got any questions, please email us at podcast@theresultshow.com. And we will see you guys next time.